Everyone. There we go.
Yes.
So welcome everyone to another edition of a SMPTE Washington, DC section virtual event. My name is Maciej Ochman and I'm your SMPTE-DC section chair. Today's event is recorded. SMPTE reserves the right to use this recorded material for SMPTE promotional purposes. If you do not agree to be recorded, we encourage you to turn off your camera and mute your mic. I would say to rename yourself in Zoom, but that would be too complicated. Let's keep it simple, as Scott mentioned. Everybody else, please feel free to turn on your cameras and mics when it's necessary. Following SMPTE protocol and tradition, there are certain announcements and information I will share with you all before we jump into the heart of the program. It will take only several minutes. So we have local SMPTE elections upon us. There are several positions that will be contested in the next couple of to few months. There are positions of the chair, treasurer/secretary for a single-year term, and 4 managers position for a 2-year term. If you are interested in running for any of these positions as SMPTE member in good standing, which means you pay your dues, please let us know and we'll share details with you. To contact us, please write an email to managers@smmptedec.org and I will post this email address in the chat. If you have a job, know of a job, you're looking for a job, or you have a job you do not want and want to nominate someone for that job, please share your information and or links in the chat window for everyone to see and to take full advantage of. I myself have a few links that I will be sharing shortly as well. We have a couple of meetings coming up. We have scheduled Jonas Bengston of HBO to talk about the basics metadata ontologies and the SMPTE language metadata table on February 23rd, 2021. Often we do join meetings with local SBE-37 chapter and cross-promote each other's events, and such is the case with the February 9th SBE meeting, where guest speaker will be Michael Guthrie, a premier harmonic ATSC technology specialist who has been with the company for over 20 years, talking about the ATSC 1.0 requirements that enable the ATSC 3.0 transition. We'll share details via email and social platform announcements in the coming days. Is Fred Willard maybe in the audience? I guess not. All right, so let's move on to the next one. There are SMPTE virtual courses coming up that feature 25% off, such as Essential of IP Media Transport for Broadcasters and Understanding SMPTE ST2110. Please log into SMPTE.org for more details. I will also post a direct link to where the courses are listed along with the description. At this point, I would like to recognize several SMPTE-DC section current and former managers in attendance who are always ready to support SMPTE community, and all of you in particular. I would like each one of them to say hi and wave to you all at one at a time when I call your name, starting with the producer of the tonight's show and today's birthday boy, none other than John Footen.
Hi, everybody.
So happy birthday, John. And
yes.
No better way to celebrate it with a whole bunch of esports fans.
Exactly.
Do we have Melissa Davis in attendance? Louis Schidler? It's not. James Snyder. Peter Wharton. I know Peter was here. He went to take a drink. Carl Kuhn.
Hello.
All right. James
Sorry,
O'Neill.
I was double muted, but glad to be here. And John, great job. Thank you.
James O'Neill. Tom Hackett.
Hello.
Rick Singer.
Hey there. Nice to be here.
Jonathan Solomon. I guess not. Did I omit anyone? Hopefully not. All right, very good. I hope this was not too burdensome to everybody. This really concludes my part of this fantastic event. And I'm going to turn it over to the producer of this event, John Footen, to get us started on an esports journey. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining. Today we're going to be talking about esports. I'm going to get to the panel in a second. We have, I don't know how many people attending now. We have at least 70, it looks like. So that's great. So I'm going to start off by showing a video to give you a sense of the flavor of the type of stuff we're talking about. I know a lot of us come from traditional media. And when the video is over, we'll jump right into the panel.
You've got one test left. I bid you welcome to Worlds 2020.
It is about none other than the game itself. It's about the very best in the globe.
I'm so excited to get into these games.
Go get your Twitch rat!
Just like that, the game explodes. Oh my God! The LCK will advance to the World Final.
Welcome to the 10th World Championship Final.
We have two fantastic teams, two amazing stories, and I think that we're in for a banger.
And Darm One Gaming are your season 2020 World Champions!
Okay. Hopefully you were all able to hear that, were you? Because I didn't hear it on my end.
Yes, we heard it just fine.
Okay. Weird Zoom thing. It was all silent for me. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator to introduce himself and introduce the panel, Evan Statton.
Hey, thanks, John. Appreciate that. First of all, I'm super excited to have been asked to be here today. So thank you. Second of all, this is the largest audience on a SMPTE meeting I think I've ever seen. So great work, John and Matcha and everybody getting a large audience for our panel today. Thank you. A little bit about me real quick. You may have seen me before. Maybe I had a beard earlier. A bunch of people were making fun of me for that. But anyway, I'm Evan Statton. I'm a solutions architect at AWS. And I usually specialize in video transmission for television systems, much like many people in SMPTE. So I'm excited about this panel because it's a little bit different. And so that's me. And then I'll turn it over to the panel to introduce themselves and hope people don't step on each other. Well, why don't we start with Jonas?
My name is Jonas. I worked traditional broadcast back in the days, but started working in esport back in 2012 and joined Twitch in 2015. So I've been at Twitch for about 6 years at this point. My work at Twitch is, compared to Evan, who works for traditional broadcast, my work is bringing traditional broadcasters onto the digital online world. So that's sort of like the opposite end of the spectrum.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm Chris Keith. I'm the broadcast systems architect at Activision Blizzard Esports. I've been with the company for about 3 years. I came on to help launch Overwatch League, and then we've also launched Call of Duty League on top of that. We're getting ready for our second season there. And I also came from a traditional, news and sports background, and then moved into the video game world as part of this effort.
Great. And let's go to Scott.
Yeah, similar background, traditional sports my whole career. Been at Riot Games 3 years, coming up on 3 years. And we cover, this is not a Riot heavy thing, but you saw our intro video. The viewership is insane. Esports is here. And I think it's time for everybody to realize it's not this bunch of nerds in a basement. It's mainstream. So I'm excited to be here, share what we've done.
Thank you. And did we get Mark from EA?
I have not seen him join. If he does join later, we'll introduce him when he gets on.
Okay, very good. In that case, Rich.
Richard Goldsmith. I work at Deloitte. I do not have a broadcast background. but I run our esports community of practice, about 330 people at Deloitte, mix of esports, former esports athletes, enthusiasts, fans, and technologists who love the space. And I've been playing games and was once upon a time an esports athlete back in the 90s. If anybody remembers Descent, that was my game.
Thanks, man. So actually, the first thing I was going to ask was, Richard, back to you. If you could give us a little bit of an overview of the quick industry trends.
Sure. So not everybody is probably familiar with the size and scale of the video game industry. And bear with me as my computer chugs on putting this thing in presentation mode. There we go. Let alone the size of the esports market these days. So video games in general, I think everybody knows they're huge. We saw the console launches. There's 2.69 billion people playing games globally. That is a massive number of people. It has eclipsed the movie and entertainment industry and just keeps growing in general. Esports is growing at a little over 10% a year. Depending on who you're talking to, we're looking at a $1.1 billion market with about 500 million people watching as of 2020. There's significant growth in the space. It's relatively immature market, but there has been a lot of scale as of the last few years, and you're starting to see franchises in cities. Like it is a real thing, and it is becoming mass. So it's been really exciting to see. A few trends that we've seen in the space to call out. Number one, people looking to try to find ways to continue to grow into that mass audience and get past the hardcore gaming crowd, especially in the US, where there's a desire to see a more mature traditional sport model for it. So figuring out how do we improve the narrative for an audience that doesn't necessarily know the game as intimately as a hardcore audience? How do we make a more immersive experience through technology, whether AR, VR, and other broadcast tech to apply to the streams? One of the challenges that a lot of the production or producers and developers have as they try to grow these audiences through their streams is the need to actually own the viewer data, because they're broadcasting on third-party platforms as a general rule, and they need to, and they're not getting data back. So you have to figure out how do we establish data sharing agreements? How do we establish some kind of hybrid of approach so that we can get some of that data? And then the last piece is it can be a lot of these major tournaments are moving around quite a bit. And they're moving hardware for those streams back and forth. The controls are on-site controllers and other assorted materials that have to move, which is increasing startup and teardown costs significantly. Cloud technology, cloud broadcast technology, as you guys would know, certainly better than I would, has improved dramatically over the last few years. And applying those technologies, which isn't necessarily the most traditional thing for game producers, can drop costs dramatically. So it's been interesting to see adoption in those spaces, even as we see on-prem technology still being one of the standards for games.
Hey, thank you very much. So Scott or Jonas, who's ever faster on the trigger, I guess, do you have anything that you'd like to share as well from your perspectives at Twitch or Riot?
1 second before they jump in, I just want to say what you said in the chat. If anybody has questions along the way, please feel free to type them into the chat, and we will gather those questions and get them to the folks as you put them in. Thanks.
I can present Twitch.
Yeah.
you aren't familiar with Twitch, I'm going to share my screen quickly, but I can introduce Twitch first. Twitch is, think YouTube, but everything is live. So it's a huge platform of user-generated content. We have everything from like top esports, stuff we were talking about before. You have League of Legends, that kind of stuff. But you also have people, cutting their lawn. We talked about before that Twitch has like, this stem from gaming, but have expanded into everything from woodworking to music making, all this kind of stuff. So I'll show you the platform quickly so you can see what it's about. So it looks like this. It's a web page. Everything is live. I can go here. And the good thing with Twitch is like at any given point, there's over 100,000 concurrent people streaming. So you can think of this 100,000 concurrent available channels for you to watch. That's how many people are streaming at any given point, 24/7 hours a day, which is really, really awesome. So I can go to browse kind of different channels. We have just chatting, which is tons of people doing as I've talked about, cutting lawns. We have someone watching sports, someone's just streaming, Google Maps. There's people talking to the camera, talking to the chat, which I'll talk to in a bit. And then there's this sort of gaming part of Twitch. So we have different games. Here's League of Legends, 213,000 viewers, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, Fortnite, which you might have heard about. So let's look at that. Here's a lot of different people streaming. So each of these are channels live right now. I go into a channel like this. Let's take this Syed here. You can see him, streaming. And there's this chat to the right where people can sort of interact with each other. So that's kind of Twitch, which is like, I'm going really fast, but it's a live platform where anyone can stream. Like you don't have to be, you don't have to pay, you don't have to do anything. Like you can stream as a user yourself. So I'm going to show you that quickly how easy it is to get live on Twitch. So most users today are streaming from their desktop PC, which is very different compared to old broadcast. So what has happened is that games have allowed these softwares to sort of capture the screen right out of the game, and you encode it on your graphics card and you stream it up to Twitch, and Twitch takes care of the video from there. So I have it right here, a very simple program called OBS, streaming to Twitch. And as you can see, sort of, yes, this is how it works for regular streamers. So each of the people streaming at Twitch does this right now. And they sort of capture the game into OBS. OBS does the thing, they compost it with their camera, their overlays, their graphics, their text, whatever. And then, as you know, you just go live on Twitch, and I went live to a test channel right here. So I'm going to check the test channel out. I think I've typed it wrong, so let's take the right one. And you can see it to the right. And the cool part about Twitch, what makes it so unique, you ask yourself, like, what's different to broadcast, right? Why is Twitch different? We focus extremely much on low latency because we think low latency is how we sort of make chat work. So a lot of these people are streaming themselves and they're reading the chat. So they're reading what's going on here to the right. Right now, I'm the one in my chat room, but if there were someone in the chat room, they could type a question like, how are you doing, right? And if I'm able to answer that question quickly enough, we call it sort of like a nice tight feedback loop, which makes the viewer feel more engaged. So that is what's different about Twitch. So if we look at the end-to-end latency, I have a quote up here. It's usually around 4 to 5 seconds now across the world, which we think is really, really good over the web. So like from any given point, if you're a big broadcaster, if you're like a person streaming from their bedroom like me, you get 4 to 5 seconds latency at 1080p 60. And that is what we think makes Twitch special, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's a very, very quick demonstration about Twitch. Of course, there's tons to learn. There's esports, there's games, there's music, there's people DJing, state of trance, some person playing accordion, there's all of it on Twitch. So it's really hard to define what Twitch is, but you can think about it as YouTube, but live.
Thanks, Jonas. Appreciate that. I am capturing the questions, so we will get back to finding people mowing their lawn shortly. Or Jonas, feel free to answer the lawn mowing questions in the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, so yes, chatting, I can ask you like quickly. Just chatting, again, people can do whatever they want. And if you scroll down to the thing with like 2 or 4 viewers, you'll find, people cooking an egg 24/7. There's a lot of nice stuff there.
and I would just call it too, I think OBS is something that if you're a SMPTE member, you should probably spend a couple minutes to check out. It's a simple application to use, but it's actually pretty deep. It's a full-blown switcher with multiple layers of graphics. And I think it's worth noting that there's like a whole generation of kids broadcasting on Twitch who don't really have a preview monitor, and who in a lot of ways are OBS is going to be what they understand broadcasting to be. So that's not a statement about like the future of the switcher or anything like that. But I would say that if you're creating content, and if you're in our business, you should definitely take a look at OBS and just start to understand how those kids are coming at broadcast.
Chris, how much does OBS cost?
It's
I mean,
open
OBS
source
is open source.
and runs on Mac, Windows, and then
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but it's a great thing when we used to work in esports and we brought in people. They just didn't understand how hard it was to do a DVE because they're just used to taking, a source in OBS and scaling it however they want. Whereas, on a normal switcher, that's used to be something that costed some money, right?
Thank you. Scott, what would you like to show us?
I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more. Coming into esports from traditional broadcast, it's wild how scrappy esports has become, or that's how esports grew to the meteoric state that it's in. There's no black burst, there's no signal generators. This is computers and laptops and webcams, and yet they can put their content out to hundreds of thousands of people. It's democratized creating content. Do I do my presentation now, or do you want to wait until the end? Because we cover bits about how this has been a very weird year with COVID and how we've been able to produce content. I'm sure the other panelists are in the same boat as us.
Sure, we can do it at the end. That's fine. I'll go into the questions because that is one of the questions, of course, what's changed this year. But before we do that, I wanted to ask one question because this is a very interesting, unique panel, I think, that we have today, where we're on a SMPTE meeting and we usually talk about TV, and the panel members all have video transmission backgrounds from TV and sports and now work in gaming. So you have a unique perspective here that I think you can help us understand, which is, what are the similarities and differences between our worlds that we should know about?
I think one interesting thing is that if you take the average TV viewer, they have never seen an uncompressed SDI source. Usually they have seen the contribution source of whatever comes to their TV. Whereas a esport, most people that watch the game have played the game, which means that they've seen the uncompressed state. So a lot of viewers of esport have like this idea of how it should look, which makes them extremely sensitive to compression artifacts, which I think is really interesting that you don't see in normal sports, even though it exists. Esport viewers can talk about like how the fonts feel weird because they have chroma subsampling, etc.
Scott?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just, especially when your games have a lot of transparency and particle effects that stack on top of one another.
Yeah, the acceptance of MPEG-4 over what we're used to, which is uncompressed SDI, and it's been odd to see how discerning the viewers are, and especially when you have a lot of high motion artifacts and MPEG-4 distribution, it can become a little blurry. So I've actually found that they're very sensitive, and it's something that they'll live with, but I don't know what would happen if we actually treated esports like we treat an NFL broadcast. Just how much better the quality can even be above that is really impressive to me.
I mean, we have labbed it really hard on our side. You know what I mean? Like and I would say we made a lot of changes for COVID, and we can produce in the cloud, but we have not. That doesn't mean we're not going to go back to doing events when we can do in-person events, and that those aren't going to use like pretty traditional, signal path elements. So we still build and treat everything as if it needs to operate in that sort of like venue-based experience. But yeah, so we want the quality to be high. We spend a lot of time tuning Overwatch encoders, you know what I mean, and getting like very, very specific stuff. It's a very difficult game to encode. It's fast. There's a lot of transparencies over text and so on and so forth. And the same thing with Call of Duty, which is, Call of Duty this year's title was one of the first ones, or last year's Modern Warfare title was the first one to support the ray tracing on the NVIDIA RTX cards. So we did a whole additional round of encoding testing once we had seeded all of our new high-end RTX cards in our observer machines, just to make sure we were sort of able to catch as much of that like ray tracing beauty as possible.
So I want to interrupt for a second. I think Mark Alston did join from EA. I saw him join. Did he stay
Yes,
on?
I'm here. I'm still here.
Hey, Mark, my apologies. I want to tell everyone up front that I was not clear in my email about which time zone we were talking about.
Yeah, no worries. That's why I was like, 6:30, let me join. Oh, I guess it's 6:30 now.
Yeah. So folks, I'll let Mark introduce himself, but real quick, just on the topic we've been at hand, it'd be good if one of you guys would talk about, you're talking about things like observer machines and things like that. This audience would like to understand a little bit more about how this all gets pulled together. What does it look like when you build a technical environment? So Mark, why don't you introduce yourselves, and then Evan will continue as our moderator.
Sure. I'm Mark Austin, everyone. Pleasure having me. Thank you so much. Technical production manager, network operation manager for EA Sports. Really been in the game for a minute now. I'm young, but I've been granted and blessed to be able to do this for a while now. Worked for NEP. I've worked for ESPN, Fox, all sorts of things. I've done music, live events. I've done just about everything under the sun. PSSI, transmission, anything you can think of. I love production. This is my heart. So I appreciate you guys having me. And once again, apologize for the tardiness.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
In regards to the question at hand, our observer machines, we actually we use them to get our gameplay in, and for us, they're just high performance gaming rigs. We just built up a new one. We're using 3090 graphics cards. Forgive me, I don't have the specs right in front of me, but 39 graphics cards. We're using.
You actually got a hold of them.
Yeah, I know. It was tough, and we were luckily able to get them right at the beginning when they first rolled out. I have a great engineer on our team, Kyle Bassett, who he's really into the gaming side. He was an observer for us on one of our shows, and he just showed he was so strong in engineering. We decided to bring him on, and so he told us what was coming around and how the performance gains from 2080 Ti's and everything to the 3090s, and as soon as we saw that performance gains, we was like, wow, we have to go after this. And coming from a game like Apex Legends, where we were seeing 90% on the video encode and on the GPU video encode, and that was consistently throughout the gameplay, just from it drawing. We went from using 90% down to 40% currently throughout the whole gameplay, and it's actually made a difference in our computers, in our usage. We're not seeing so many errors with the streams dropping, and more consistency in the quality we're getting. It's actually changed up how we're able to get this in. So our next process is actually moving to 4K UHD, and also trying to get better encoding properties.
So I have a question about encoding properties, I guess, for the group as well. One, I guess so what are the right encoding properties, settings and whatnot for gaming when we're talking about this
per game
super low latency? But
and this might be the refrain that you hear from me throughout all this, because I work on Call of Duty. I work on Call of Duty League, Overwatch League, but I also work on all of the Hearthstone esports and all of our World of Warcraft esports. They all kind of fall under our same umbrella. So because we have to represent and sort of support a lot of different games that operate in different ways, and so on and so forth, we sort of see a bunch of it. I mean, in general, for folks who don't know out there, when you are playing in a multiplayer game, you can frequently spectate your friends. Right? So if Evan and I are friends in Overwatch and I open Overwatch and he's playing, I can right click on him in the social menu and hit spectate and just jump in and fly around his game. And this is the fundamental basic operation that esports has used to tell the story of what's happening in the game. So you have the idea of being able to view the individual players' machines, which is something that, at least for us, we don't ever do directly. But then you also have these spectators who move throughout the map and basically are acting as free cams. And we call those observers, and they basically operate as our cameramen inside of the game. And so in a traditional pre-COVID signal path, at least for us, we, resampled these, converted these back out to SDI, switched them with regular graphics and so on and so forth. We have a lead observer who is actually trained to be a TD. He starts out as a hardcore game player, but we give him a reduced sort of TD switch set, and his job is to coordinate with the different cameramen inside of the game and pick which view that, we're sort of sending out into the program at any minute. And then from there on, it's a relatively traditional graphics and replay workflow that you would expect from inside of sports. So, traditionally inside of venues, we would then encode after the switcher. But now in the COVID world, we've had to sort of move our encoding stack back to those individual observer machines. So again, we went through a hardware refresh this year as well, as we sort of got all of our observers these really great PCs at their houses so that they could both encode high quality video for us and observe the game at a high level.
So in that case, are you just encoding on the same GPU that you're rendering on, essentially saying, I'm going to render these frames and also encode them? Or are you doing something else internal to the observer?
You know, they have played with multiple signal paths at those guys' houses this year. We try to keep the encoding off of the actual PC when we can. Is what I'd say. For games like Hearthstone and stuff, it's not as big of a deal. But what we also have used signal paths where we go out and recapture on a secondary PC, depending on what the settings are going to be and so on and so forth. Our observers run the game with like maximum graphics, and then they also have additional overlays that the games do. Like if you watch our professional leagues, Overwatch League or Call of Duty League, the players are all wearing jerseys, and they're wearing team colors and so on and so forth. So that's something that's sort of set up and enabled for the observers. Teams could give competitive advantages if like it's better to be the black and green team than the fluorescent pink and yellow team. So a lot of time the players don't actually see the in-game jerseys when they're playing the game. So a lot of the kind of camera magic for us happens at that observer level.
Got it.
And if I can throw in on there too, we actually do the same thing. We have observer machines as well, and we started off at having them at the end user's home. But what we were noticing was because Apex is played, and I'm sure the other games are played as well, globally, when we do our Europe tournaments, we were having higher latency and actually not able to get consistent signals from like our Europe tournaments and stuff like that. So what we ended up doing was we installed our 10 gig circuits in the studio and moved our observer PCs back into the studio, where we can get a better throughput from using the computer. And now, like I said, we're moving away from using the GPU encode and going to an actual dedicated hardware encoder for transport now. So it's been an interesting ride to actually get to the point where we are now and seeing how we're able to, how can we get the best quality and get back to, lossless results from what we're used to in a baseband world.
Wanted to say what's very interesting the last few years is that consumer graphics card didn't used to, but I think since the last 5 years, they actually shipped with a section of the GPU dedicated to video encoding. So right now, if you buy a modern GPU, if you play the game at 100% of GPU, there's actually still room that is reserved for video encoding. That is how popular streaming is. That hardware manufacturers are now building separate encoders onto the card just for streaming onto the internet. So like that tells you the story about how many people want to go online and stream their gaming onto the world right now.
Consoles also.
Let me move on to the next question. Great conversation. Thank you. What have you been seeing as changes in the gaming consumption since the pandemic began? Let's start with Scott, since he was quiet on the last one. Or maybe
no, actually, I think it should be a Jonas. That's actually a better one because we've changed our production methodology, and that's an awesome story. But yeah, I'd love to know about consumption too.
We can start with me, start with Jonas. Either one.
Oh, sorry. Whoever has the consumption side.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. From what the stats that we've been pulling, we've seen session length and just overall consumption spike hard, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. I admit that my consumption certainly has gone up significantly. And I think it's been a great opportunity. I think it was probably hard to capitalize on in the beginning because everybody's events are now have to be virtual. Everybody's got to change footing. But one of the things that we have noticed, and I'm very curious to see what Jonas has seen, is that while consumption among fans, existing fans, is up, we haven't seen a huge spike. Like we've seen year over year, you're getting 10 to 15% increase in fan base in general, but you haven't seen that spike that you would have hoped to see at the beginning of the pandemic or even through the pandemic in scale. Just it hasn't. The pandemic hasn't had an impact on driving that many more people into consuming esports content, which at the beginning, when we saw ESPN start picking up esports content, I was really hopeful that that would drive more interest, more intrigue, et cetera. But we're still seeing that 10 to 15% year over year bump in terms of the fan base. Jonas, I'd love to hear what your stats look like.
I think what's really interesting there is, like, as you said, esport actually hasn't grown that much this year. But what has grown is gaming. Like game streaming has, if you look at like any basic platform, has more than doubled just by the pandemic, and especially social games. So there's a big game called Among Us, and these games tend to replace the interactions we have as, people going to, just like hanging out. Games tend to now sort of replace that kind of interaction, and people try to watch them mostly because, they sort of feel a bit alone, and they want to just have a social, just be part of some sort of social group doing something social. So that has like exploded, right, this year. A lot of these games that used to be mobile games have exploded. But esport in general, mostly because, production value with pandemic has gone down, and it's harder to sort of make it count. Therefore, we haven't really seen that explode from what I've seen, at least with the platform trends this year.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting though, because it has been a real big boon for some existing games that, like Among Us, had been out for I think 2 years, and some other games that have gained significant streaming fan bases have gotten dramatic increases in.
Among Us, just to clarify, Among Us is like, if you ever played Mafia, in reality, it's basically the game, but it's based on a spaceship. So it's the gameplay is like you can play it with a finger on a phone. It's more about you lying to your friends over voice comm. It's really what it's about, and that's why it's so popular to watch other people lie to each other.
And the art style's super funny. It's really just it's a good time. Now, internationally, I think somebody in chat just asked. Internationally, you're seeing esports growing a little faster. And certainly they have more scale in the US. I think in China, it was, the last stats I saw, it was 600 or 700 million people were engaged in esports in some way, shape, or form, which is an insane number, which, like the League of Legends championship outdrew the Super Bowl by orders of magnitude. And most of that was driven by Asian viewership. Primarily China, so we've seen the international scene significantly outpace the U.S., but the U.S. is where a lot of focus is because that's where a lot of sponsorship dollars are.
Okay, great. What changes to production, say, Scott, for when we talk about the changes in production this year? What changes do you think will stick? What changes do you think will go back to the old way? Where do you think?
That's a great question. Can I share? Because I think it'd be easier just to be more visual.
Yeah, please.
Don't mind. It's going to take me a second to set it up, but I'll try to keep it quick, but I'd love to walk you through the changes that we had to do for Worlds this year in Shanghai. Let me know if everyone sees that.
We do.
All right. So first of all, I think it's probably important to know what an esports tournament is, and I'm speaking for Riot, but a lot of the publishers and developers follow the same model, that these are not like one-day events. These are experiences that fans will go to. So typically we'll spend 6 weeks on the road for our Worlds and travel to anywhere from 5 to 6 to 7 different cities, setting up entire shows. So the 2019 finals, of which I'm in my background, is in Paris. That was our finals in the Accor Hotels Arena, where we brought in holograms, because why the hell not? We had features that were shot at Versailles. It's a truly global sport, and no one has a trademark on esports. I think that's really important. Is Riot has esports, so does EA, so does Activision Blizzard, so does any other publisher. There's no one that's like the king of esports. So this is an example from our Paris finals. We were able to get 99.6 million viewers. That's Super Bowl territory, but that's global viewers. Keep that in mind. And then the AMA is a new metric they like to tout. Peak concurrent was 44. At the time that this deck was made, we didn't know what Worlds was going to be and ended up beating it this year.
Can you just quickly define the AMA? Because I think that's a metric we don't normally deal with.
Yeah, average minute audience over the length of content you produce. So if you produce content for 6 weeks, what's the average viewers for every minute of it? It's a metric that's being used better than peak concurrent, because You know, you can have a big spike and then the rest of the show had 5 viewers. This is the average over the entirety of the event. For number of hours broadcast, the average viewers for every minute. And I'm not a statistician, so if I'm wrong on that, please someone correct me, but that's how I understand it.
That's correct.
Okay, yay, see? So a thing I think is important to know is how we produce this, and this is not unique to Riot either. In order to hit that many people, they all speak different languages. We don't just have one piece of content that's in English. We actually produce 19 simultaneous streams in 19 different languages. That's everything from different graphics, different announcers, casters, analysts. Every show is unique, but they're built off of some of the same raw materials. So that's video streams coming from an event. For this one, it happened to be in Shanghai, but we would then use our network to get it to all of our production facilities all over the world, of which you can see a sampling of them. One thing that Riot has that I believe some of the other developers have as well is their own ISP. We actually run our own global ISP to support our games. We just happen to get to use it because we are also part of Riot and we kind of begged and asked nicely. So we're able to put all of our content onto the same backbone network that supports our titles like League, Valorant, Wild Rift, and so on. So these are the points of presence for our global network. And so you can see we're in Shanghai. That's wonderful, but how do we actually get all that content to all of these production centers that you saw? This is the backbone. So this is just a snapshot of what's going on a quiet day within Riot. So that scale is in hundreds of gigs a second. So this is what it takes to run global networks like this. So for Worlds, we actually started measuring how much content we were actually moving. This is just behind the scenes content. This is not public facing or distributed to end users. This is just what we needed to get the content from Shanghai and produce it because we could not send our whole crew to the country. For COVID reasons, visa reasons, and just general safety, it didn't make sense. So we actually distributed the show and had a bunch of different partners produce it within Riot's infrastructure. And we ended up getting 3.2 petabytes of data. And to put that in perspective, if for anyone who's not a data nerd, which sounds like everyone on this call is, it's a lot of data. So now that we've got that from Shanghai, we actually distribute the raw materials to all of our production centers, and then we'll be able to make shots and composites like this, which seems easy, but in reality, our studio's in Berlin, our caster is in Los Angeles, and the one producing the background is Shanghai, China. So all of those have to be exchanged kind of seamlessly in order for us to make 19 different languages of content simultaneously live. We use broadcast partners. That's how we distribute this content and how we make so much of it in different ways. And then we hand that off to distribution partners who then, like Twitch, get it out to the millions and millions of fans. But the one thing I wanted to call out, because the question was how we changed. This is how we've always kind of done it. We've never done it to the scale of people working in their homes. But one thing that we were able to add to this show because of COVID was actually extended reality and augmented reality. So I would love to just show this to kind of show you what was possible. The idea there is that's the set for the first 5 stages of Worlds this past year, just a box and a video village behind it. But what we were able to do with it is create a 360 dimensional world rendered in the Unreal Engine with a fleet of RTX 8000s, GPUs, as we talked about earlier, to be able to make that setting change and be dynamic. So the only thing physical in that room is the sleds and the humans, and then everything else is LED and then Unreal Engine that just extends it. So I won't play the whole video, but I'll just give you a little taste of what was possible. This was all done live. I won't play the whole documentary, but it's all available online if you want to see it. These are the worlds we're able to create. We wouldn't have done this if COVID hadn't been raging rampant. It forced us to try new things and come up with a different way to produce content and make it changing and dynamic, despite the fact we can't do a city tour. We can't load into a giant stadium and an arena. We had to stay in this one spot for almost the entire show. So there on the left is what we saw, and then on the right is what the fans at home saw. And to give you a view of what it would actually look like if you were there, that's a camera shot just looking onto an empty set. And we tried some dimensionality. We tried to create the space. This one is easier to see the gaps. But if you were behind the scenes and wondering what players were seeing, that's how we were able to do directed cameras. Each of the cameras are only rendered at the time they're taken. So we could change the perspective, but from your home viewer, you're always in the best seat in the house. So I will stop and just kind of share some of the behind the scenes look. We would never have been able to do this if it wasn't for COVID.
Are you going to do it again?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're rolling this out to every regional studio, every show we do. We've been bit by the bug. We get it.
Speaking
It's
of
so
somebody who's
freeing
done-
to be able to produce content and change the world with the click of a save file.
Yeah, Call of Duty League did something pretty similar this year by importing one of the environments from Warzone, which is, I don't know if anybody here plays Warzone, but there's a tournament. There's like a stadium in the middle of the map, and they brought that interior and then ran that as the set for the Call of Duty League finals, with sort of everyone kind of inside of the Call of Duty map. So we also embraced a bunch of that sort of virtual set technology to try to make up for the fact that we were essentially remote producing everything.
Well, one call out, it's not virtual set, because we explored that too, but that uncanny valley piece is rough, and it's hard to get around because virtual sets just, they don't look that real. So I think you've probably run into this too. That's why we chose LED walls and LED floor. It's because you can shoot that without having to render anything. So most of our shots are shot without having to run it through an Unreal Engine. But yeah, no, it's challenging, and it's not, it's danger dragons ahead when you start to do this, because our shows are 8 hours long. So it had to just work the entire time, but I feel you.
Yeah. I think the biggest change for us was really the move to online play. Right. And so in a lot of ways, like both of our Premier League titles are first person shooters, the players, these players, their reflexes are so unbelievably amazing. I remember during the first season of Overwatch League, there was, they did a slow-mo replay of Carpe with a sniper, playing Widowmaker with a sniper, and he watches the Genji ninja run through a hallway that's like on the other side of the map. And then they slow-mo it down to a single frame for you, and the sniper headshots him as he's like jumping out of a window. And the first thing I thought was like, I've played hundreds of hours of Overwatch. I didn't know you could get through that window. like that was like my very first thought. And then my next thought was like, okay, so Carpe knows exactly how long it takes Genji to get from that door to that door with such frame accurate precision that he can actually snag him coming through that window. And that's sort of like what it means to be a professional Overwatch player, is to have like mastered the board and have that kind of like level of reflexes. So I think, we were very focused on, being able to do these like LAN events, and especially Call of Duty League also has a sort of, the Call of Duty community is very vocal about the difference between playing on a LAN versus playing online. And so there would definitely, we had a strong focus on being able to sort of support LAN events. But we looked at COVID and we're like, okay, like online play is what is happening this year. And in some ways that matched our move to cloud production. And, and that was essentially our vision, was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it with everybody remote. And so our whole control room was remote. All of the observers were remote. It was done on a team by team basis, but many of the teams, their individual players were remote from one another. They weren't necessarily playing out of the same room as one another. So that was like overall a really big change. I don't know that we will, we definitely learned a lot and are going to continue to use cloud-based production technology, probably often in combination with online play. But I don't know that it is the tool that's going to replace everything that we do, because I think that, as Scott showed you, big venue events are part of this, and we're really excited to go back to a place where there's extremely low latency between the players, and as soon as somebody wins, there's smoke and lights filling up the entire venue, and all of the like sort of full-blown in-house effects that you would expect from like a major league tournament, and then amped up to the esports level with particle effects and the whole entire thing, right? So I think that's what's been interesting for us. We knew that cloud production was going to kind of be a thing. We were looking at it in terms of our localization efforts, because we also deliver in many different languages and have a similar signal path to what Scott outlined. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities for when you're doing those kind of fan outs and stuff like that to really take advantage of the cloud. but I don't know that it replaces an event any more than you would want to run the big board at a professional sports event remotely.
Yeah, I want to give Mark a chance to get in on this. Mark, what are your thoughts here?
Absolutely, I agree with what was said. I don't see the cloud replacing what we've done. What I will say, the cloud has allowed us to leverage so much more though what we've been able to do. EA, when COVID hit in March, everybody was forced out the studio. It wasn't like you have to be out. It was we're not letting nobody in. Your key cards are off. Don't come back right now at all. Which really propelled us into figuring out how we can do a show, because I think we had a show the same week we were kicked out the studio. And so we went through a couple iterations of software and providers and SaaSes that we were using, and to the point of where we are now, I don't think we've ever had anybody in the studio at all to do our show, and we're still doing, a full, at least an Apex scenario. It's a battle royale where all your players are at home already, so that part's easy, and getting the feeds in we're somewhat okay. But our production crew, we have producer, director, TD, who are nowhere near each other and have to communicate in real time and see each other, see the feeds in real time and doing everything, which really stepped up the level of, okay, well, what is possible in the cloud? And so we've leveraged some amazing technology from Grass Valley and how we're doing our distribution among AWS and how we actually build up our cloud network to allow us to really keep everybody at home. And I think going forward with us, the plan is to say, hey, we want to come back in the studio and we want to do things back in the studio, but also what can we keep at home? And what is this? And, it's brought up a different conversation. What is a healthy work-life balance? So they're really concerned about that part. And I think this is giving us the ability to actually get into that and find out, well, what is healthy and what is that? But even on a broader scale, I see us being, if we were to continue this level, I can see us shaking up the industry just enough where we can say, hey, maybe some of these C-level shows or these B-level shows, why don't we do them as full cloud-based and really redo the REMI structure?
That's really interesting. I just heard all three of you guys riff on the same idea, which is we were forced to build something that we didn't expect we needed to build right now because of the certain circumstances. But now that we did, we're not going to undo the work. We're going to do both. We're going to do the way it was before, and also we're going to keep doing this new stuff that we did and sort of allow the industry to have more than one way to do things. I think that's awesome. So, and I think it's pretty telling that all three of you told a similar story like that. Thank you. I want to
great minds think alike.
But it's also
the show must go on, right? Like
oh yeah, absolutely. We don't produce them. It doesn't happen.
Exactly. You got to figure it out.
Yeah. I want to pivot to the audience questions because I want to be cognizant of time and I want to make sure people feel heard and answered. So a few of them are short. A few of them, might be a little bit longer, but I want to start with Jonas. Any tips on getting more out of your search on Twitch? There were a few questions.
I think
the lawn mowing, but
like anything on the internet, discovery is the hardest part. Going from linear TV into we talk about when we talk about people experiencing Twitch for the first time, it's like, where do I start? And I think the way to start is just you sort of have to go the same way you do with TV. You have to sort of start and figure out what category you're interested in, give it a shot, figure it out. And on Twitch as well, I didn't talk about this before, but one thing that is very different with Twitch compared to TV is that the personalities are almost like centerpieces of internet, right? The same as, you call YouTubers influencers. They are really, really big in terms of how they pull and sort of the atmosphere they create. So normally what I tell people is start by finding a creator you like, that you sort of enjoy watching, that is entertaining, that you want to watch. And then you can go from there. It's usually we have machine learning that sort of figures out, okay, you watch this person for a long time. We will recommend you people that is sort of similar in the network graph with our machine learning technology.
Thank you. Next question.
And I would,
go ahead.
I would just, for Twitch, is a good place to do it. If you like cooking, if you like whatever, one of the biggest crowdfunding campaigns in history was Critical Role, which broadcasts on Twitch. I think they funded a season of a cartoon based on their D&D campaign to the tune of 10 or 11 million dollars, and now it's been picked up on Amazon Prime. So like Twitch has some amazing creators.
That is a perfect segue to the next question, actually, Richard. Thank you. Next question was, what's the crossover for content, like gaming content, towards traditional cable? I want to ask it the way that the person actually asked it is, will major esports events eventually reach conventional broadcasting channels on cable, or will they stay with online platforms?
We have no problem delivering to those endpoints now. Overwatch League was, what do you call it? The first season was on ESPN, ESPN2. We did some simulcasts onto Disney. It was 100% supported in our current cloud transmission infrastructure. For us, linear TV is just like another endpoint.
I would add, we're already doing it. Remember, this is international. So there's already esports being distributed on simple cable systems in Korea. That's a channel. So yeah, it's already happening. It's the US that's kind of behind.
Definitely agree too. We got encoders to go everywhere. You know, whoever wants to pick it up, just give us a call.
So we got to get some gaming channels on US cable now. It sounds like.
Well, and I would also say that ESPN dabbled in it a bit. Like ESPN has broadcast esports earlier during COVID when there were no sports. So there's definitely precedent.
Didn't that happen more widely? That I had heard that some of the esports, especially EA games, were being played by professional players as
absolutely
content.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I believe Sunday we have Derwin James, which is NFL and Madden. They have a show on ESPN this Sunday, and I believe Turner picked up some FIFA shows as well that'll be airing on some of their channels as well.
Yeah, and Turner also aired some of the NBA 2K games.
Correct.
So what are this is another question that's related to this. It just seems like it's a natural flow, huh? We got lucky. Can you talk about the leagues and franchise structures within esports and how they relate to the traditional sports? Like, what are some similarities and differences between franchises and
one big difference is that in esport, I mean, this is very untraditional. Usually the company that runs the game also runs the league, right? So we have Blizzard on the call, we have Riot, we have EA, which is normally, normally you have the middle layer of the broadcaster in between. You might have like the property owner and then you have the broadcaster. Whereas in esport, due to the way it sort of came up, the broadcaster or the gaming company sort of tries to set the standard by doing really good productions, which is very unusual. But it also gives that's why I think it's different. It gives the broadcaster much more creative control about how they want to present it. They can change the game to match how they want the broadcast to look like, which I think you can't really change football. So that is why it's very, very different in that sense, I think.
Yeah, I always described it when I was at NFL was we would go to the field and then we'd stop. We'd aim the cameras at the field, and the field was the league's problem. In esports, being vertically integrated, we're responsible for the field itself and the broadcast and the social content that surrounds it. It's a far more vertically integrated. The last piece being distribution. We have partners like Twitch and YouTube, but everything else from creation of the game and the sport all the way through is all maintained by companies that make it.
Yeah, I mean, I also am in charge of the stats pipeline for Overwatch League and Call of Duty League, which is, you can't just necessarily show up in the stands and log every play and every strike and ball in the same way that we can track the location of every kill. So, I think in some ways, there's a strong line between the proprietary publisher information and the really interesting information you want to know about the sport that, will continue to make that a tight marriage as we go forth in esports. I mean, I really think that when esports does it the best, it's when individual games are kind of maximizing their own personality in what they do. Like, I mean, I think Riot is great at this. Like, pick ban is a really big part of the League of Legends experience, and they blow it up with augmented reality graphics and so on and so forth. Like it's you know what I mean? And that is where I see a lot of this stuff going. And I know that's what we try to do, is that like we don't produce Hearthstone the same way that we produce Overwatch League, because those are like, you know, wildly different games in a lot of different ways, and we end up having different goals. And I think that, you know, to Jonas's point about what's popular and what takes off on Twitch, it's things that are sort of like authentic creators. And that's what makes esports so interesting to me, is that like, it is about what game, you know, they're doing a farming simulator league, right? You know, so, and so on and so forth. So I think that the real key for esports is just to sort of lean in to what the game is, you know what I mean? Because that's what it like you're really like showing and making it all about. I know that that's what we kind of keep on coming back to, is like making sure that Overwatch League feels like Overwatch, and kind of carries that overall like brand vision through it.
Great, thank you. We had a question: what role would a computer scientist play in this side of the esports industry?
From your own Twitch. No, but there's tons of, I guess, here's the thing, right? This is a very new medium, both from terms of the game engines, to the game productions, to, you know, the delivery. So there's just tons of opportunities that I think exist in this industry that are very, 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 very into the computer scientist world.
Great. Let's see.
Actually, I'll add to that because I think that's an awesome point. Our sports are entirely powered by technology. They couldn't exist without technology. So for anyone going into CS or having a CS degree, whether you go into coding or infrastructure or networking or systems, we're hiring. I know all the other ones on the panel are certainly hiring. You can't go wrong, and there's so many ways to get involved.
That's especially good for the students on here to hear. There's a number of students on the audience here.
Just remember how, like, you know, just take Twitch as an example. You know, we ship everything over the public internet, which means, as you know, all these other panelists, we have to build their own ISPs. There's tons of servers, code, mapping, transcoding, ingest software, and then, you know, just interfacing with these partners. There's so much computer science that if you have a computer science degree and you want to go into esports, I think there's just like more opportunities than it might be even broadcast even.
I mean, there's an opportunity if you want to go into the world of coding plugins for OBS only, so that every time someone donates you $1, things happen on the screen. That's almost big enough to be an industry in and of itself right now. So I would definitely say, if you're interested in interfacing, I would actually say, again, OBS is such an interesting place to start, and looking at how people are using it.
And machine learning, I'm gonna throw in there as well. We're dabbling into machine learning and AI as well in our broadcast and gaming environment. So she got that. You're off to the races before me.
A related question about security. How does the gaming industry think about cybersecurity?
They'll come to my house if I talk about that.
I was just gonna say, nope.
I'm gonna say I can't tell you because I'm in an audit now.
Real. Sorry, I should have specified. Are there jobs in cybersecurity in the gaming industry?
Absolutely.
Every game struggles with cheaters, right? Every game struggles with cheaters. There are just so much work that goes into helping games be competitive and have competitive integrity. So if you're into cybersecurity, trust me, there are so many jobs just battling people that want to get a competitive advantage.
Speaking of battling, good segue into the next question. The segue into the next question is, are there any particular challenges in broadcasting, fighting, or battling games?
Particle.
Many of us do.
I can say particle. So fighting games, if you don't know what they are, is usually a 2D view of two characters fighting against each other. But the problem are that there's usually very fast motion. These games are run extremely fast compared to like a game like Overwatch that are fast. These games can, you know, the character can jump between frames, you know, half the screen. It's very fast. And usually it spits out particle effects, which are these small dots on the screen. And to an encoder, that's just white noise. It's like, you know, what is this, right? It's very hard to encode and it's very unpredictable. So, you know, broadcasting fighting games mostly comes down to usually the developer have to downgrade the visuals just to make it streamable, because it's so hard to encode these games. And, you know, frankly, with the technology we have today, there's very few encoders that are able to do the motion prediction for these games.
Yeah, and I would also say that fighting games are heavily associated with consoles, which come with their own like esports restrictions. A lot of what myself and Scott are going to be working on a lot is PC-based gaming, which gives you a lot of flexibility because you have a computer. I frankly, Street Fighter 2 has an awesome tournament culture on Twitch, and I highly recommend if you can like catch a like in-person Street Fighter competition when they come up, because they like walks in like it's boxing matches and stuff, and it's very much like I'm going to plug my controller into this console and play you on this screen. What do you call it? Which I think I like love about that culture. But for the way that we do esports, I think that'd be really difficult, because capturing from consoles, having individual like different types of layers, I think that could be complex. So the fighting game scene sort of I think would definitely have its own challenges.
Yeah, well, and also from a spectator standpoint, you have games like Street Fighter 2. A lot of esports are consumed on mobile. Games like Street Fighter 2 have an art style that are pretty well made for like I can still make out what's going on the screen, and the fighting games are fast. Whereas you look at some of the other fighting games that might have a darker art style, that might have smaller characters, and it becomes really difficult to broadcast those effectively and let people actually see what the heck is going on. Which I think, at least in my armchair quarterback opinion, is one of the reasons that they typically have a much smaller viewer base than some of the major FPS titles and certainly battle arenas.
Awesome. I want to do one more question. I know there's a few others that keep popping up, but I want to be respectful of time. So I'm inclined to write them down and get back to the authors of the question, if that's okay, so that we can wrap. But the last question that I captured was, do you guys find yourselves feeling there are elements in gaming that traditional broadcasters can learn from and adopt to some degree to stay relevant, especially to younger audiences?
I totally do. Like I feel broadcasting as at least from the engineering side, we should have always been on this push to be working from home, especially when we start to get into the networking side of it. As soon as that control plane got there, things should have been started to move this way, and we were late to it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not afraid to say that. That's something we should learn, is how to be more embracive of new technology. I understand we didn't want to move because you can rely on a cable. If a cable goes bad, I can just replace the cable and be done. The internet goes down, it's kind of like, well, what do I do? But the ability, to be forward facing in the technology and not just sit back and wait to determine what's going to happen. I think that's something we all, in the industry should learn how to be more, like I said, more embracive of that.
Definitely. I think chat, I think that the sports industry is missing huge opportunities when it comes to chat. And chat badging and what you can learn about what your customers think. I think that the whole, that's one thing that is baked into esports culture, is this idea that there is a chat going on the right, and you have flares and you have rewards and all of these other kind of viewer engagement tie-ins. So I think it's I would be quite happy to spam my little like Patriots icon in next to a playoff game if I was able to do so in a sporting event, or cheer for a given boxer in that same kind of way. So I think that if there's one thing that sports can take back from esports, it's the power of like that chat window engagement.
Yeah, and not just the chat window. I mean, fan engagement in general is what esports does incredibly well. Like, granted, these people, like the people watching, tend to be huge proponents of the titles that they're watching, but you can take away a lot from it. Like, there's even a patent in a game coming out where fan engagement actually impacts in-game activity and in-game events, and like Hunger Games style, like loot drops and stuff like that, driven by the audience. So it's an amazing tool to engage people, and especially when traditional sports are struggling for viewership. Like, we've seen ratings go down on a lot of the traditional properties, and being able to engage their fan base to a higher degree would go a long way to changing that, I think.
I think on that
It's interesting because earlier somebody asked, will esports go on to cable? And now we're saying, well, wait a minute, why don't we just put the real sports on Twitch or something like that?
So it's a good example. I think that what I want to bring up here is something that we've experimented with at Twitch. We actually, so just context, we together with NFL, we put Thursday Night Football on Twitch the last 3 years, right? Together with Prime Video and NFL. But what we took to them is something that has popped up on Twitch, which is called co-streaming, which is basically a esport audience allows people to say, you know, take this feed and put your own commentary on it and your own kind of style on the commentary, which allows someone to cast it in Spanish or someone to cast it from their sofa, and they sort of bring their community with them, right? So instead of having the normal viewership, they bring people that never watch sport. We have a streamer that, you know, was streaming Fortnite. He will bring 50,000 viewers that views Fortnite into football, right? And we, together with NFL, we tried this out, and it turned out to be a huge success in that there's a lot of younger people today that just aren't aware that it can be interesting watching sports because the people they watch don't watch sports, right? So working with them to enable them to co-stream and do this kind of like social engagement, sort of like, you know, breaking the sphere between traditional sports and gaming, I think that's where we've seen tons of success on helping traditional broadcasters. And what ended up happening is actually like, people, you know, the success of this has turned into, you know, a thing that we now do every TNF. So for the TNF we're going to do forward, co-streaming is going to be part of it because it's just such a success for Fox, and especially how they think about what people, you know, how engaged people get around their property.
Thank you. There were two questions actually related to this, a bit of a pivot, just it's not related, but on 5G and ATSC. So how do y'all think about new 5G tech and ATSC tech interacting with the gaming industry?
My main feeling about 5G is I will always take more bandwidth out of venues. And if 5G means I can do different events in more venues than I could before, that sounds great. Because that's mainly, I see that as the primary driver for us, at least.
From an audience point of view, I mean, people are getting so used to watching, you know, online platforms wherever they go. So being able to deliver that, you know, basically today, there are places in the world where you can't watch online video, where you can watch baseband video, right? But I think 5G, in my mind, will enable people to have a very, very solid experience wherever they walk, especially downtown. And what we see a lot if we have a big esport events is that people will actually sit with their phone in the arena and watch the thing they're watching. You know, people going to the event will still watch the platform on their phone in their hand because they want to see the game closer up. They want to have a better view. It's really hard to see, you know, even if the monitor is big, they still want to see it, the details, the stats, etc. So they will use the second screen in the arena, right, and watch the same sport they're watching there. So I think 5G will unlock a lot of those use cases and help those viewers sort of just consume more of that.
Now, I even throw on we were looking at how to augment data with 5G as well, especially with it being more performant networks, be able to get more to the user faster. And so we were looking at how can we, you know, do like holograms with the phone, or they point their phone towards the stage and see extra stuff before COVID, you know, and get to that point. But that's what we were looking at 5G. And if we can leverage that, like I said, more bandwidth, better.
And especially when you can make that in-stadium experience more immersive, like Mark was just saying, because when, you know, post-COVID times when you can actually go to an event, number one, people have gotten used to just watching stuff on their phone at home, and number two, you know, the esports experience, in-stadium experience, hasn't evolved that much since the original, you know, back in the 90s, early 2000s, when I would actually go to an event much smaller than any of the Riot events, and just watch a bunch of guys on a LAN with a big screen above them. Like, yes, we've got better production values, but like it hasn't changed a ton in stadium since then. So I think the advent of 5G in stadiums, like using second screens and using the bandwidth that's allowed there, like gives you an opportunity to do some really cool stuff.
Great. Any closing thoughts? Let's go around the horn here. Chris?
Sure, I'll just play off what Richard said. Man, I've been trying to do second screen since I worked at Current TV like more than 10 years ago. And I'll just say, like, it's all about synchronization. Like, when you are pushing HLS streams out to the edge, you do not know what frame your viewer is at any given moment. And so for I think that is one of the things that I'm really looking forward to making work and seeing work in the streaming world, is just the idea of client-side graphics. You know what I mean? And being able to, like, trigger a graphic, have it execute inside of the player at the right time inside of the video, and so on and so forth. So I think that to me is the technology that I'm looking to see unlocked in the world of transmission and distribution that'll really start to make that stuff possible. Because we've been hacking it with audio fingerprinting and all of this other kind of stuff, and tweaking manual delays for a long time. But if we want second screen, we need to know where the player's at.
Do you know if there's any, and this is open to everybody, do you know if there's any standardization efforts around client-side graphic overlays that would be interoperable? Because Chris, I'm inclined to agree with you. And I also think that that's applicable to broadcasting as well for television, because I'll give you the example of like a play out channel now. A lot of channels being played out are only being played out because of the branding, like the graphic overlays that a particular broadcaster happens to want. But if you could do that on the client side, on the player side, on the set-top box, whatever, and play stuff out, you've just unlocked a whole new method of broadcasting. And I think you're onto something. So I don't know, what does the panel think?
I mean,
what projects are underway?
The lowest tier, like OBS, they've standardized weird enough on using just HTML as their overlay technology. And it's like the web has grown with, there's the WebGL, and there's always like, 3D engines in the web. They're actually starting to push out pretty sophisticated graphics just out of like basically what is a web browser embedded. Even though the sad part is about there's no good offering solutions, you don't have WizRT and those kind of nice suites to make.
There are some companies coming out, by the way, just so you know, there's
yeah.
Not to call out vendors, but if you poke around, there's a bunch of people playing in that space recently.
Yeah, but there's definitely vendors right now. But that has been a change where the standardization seems to be the web browser, and then people are offering tools to the web browser to make graphics, and then you can run Chromium or whatever web browser just headless on the server or wherever you want, and get basically equal rendering in whatever platform you're running it on.
Right. Absolutely. Just like games have unique IDs, that's kind of how it's going. Like, and that's why 5G is kind of important, because along with geofencing and the network being there, now you're able to say, hey, when this person or this unique ID arrives in this type of area or this event, hey, if you go to this billboard right here, you can point your phone at it and get content served uniquely to you, instead of just being an overall, hey, this is what we have.
Mark, while we're on you, any closing thoughts overall for the panel today?
Closing thoughts. I wish I was here for the first hour so I can gather it all.
You didn't miss much. We were still like going through intros when you joined.
No worries. I definitely, I think we're in for a great ride here. Broadcasting, like I said, broadcasting has been around forever, and we get to the point where we're seeing quantitative shifts. Went from standard depth to HD to 4K to 8K. Now we're looking at, okay, well, what's going to be the next thing? And I think esports and how we're transitioning from traditional broadcasting to how we're able to do stuff more integrated from home or from studio or wherever it's going to leverage us to be able to get to a wider reach and able to see things that we've never seen before in broadcasting.
Thank you, Scott.
Oh, you couldn't have teed that up better, Mark. I was noodling on what's different between esports and traditional broadcasters, and I keep coming back to this idea that player experience first, or player experience matters, and put that first in your way that you produce content. That's Riot's motto. You now know our Wi-Fi password. If you come to campus, player experience first, and it's everything that we focus on. And I think what's missing, and what I've really enjoyed coming into this industry fresh from a different industry, is there's so much feedback. Like you guys were talking about chat, you get instant feedback from your viewers on the experience. And if it's up to you to listen to it. And I think that to me is, if I had to sum up the difference between why esports has had meteoric growth, is we listen. And I'm telling you, at Riot, we're massive, but we still mess up. And we see it quickly and we make a change. And by the time we're back on the air after the commercial break, we've fixed it. That to me is not the same as a broadcasting model where it's one to many. I hope you like it. We're not changing it for you. You have to, if you want to get the engagement that you're going to get from esports fans, because they'll call you out on it. So if I had to sum it up, to me, that's what's been very different, is we're very much more beholden to our viewers and their experience.
Thank you. And lastly, Richard, any closing thoughts about the industry?
Well, first, I'll apologize to Scott for being one of those loud voices at times. But no, I've been involved in esports, like I said, since the mid-90s, and it's been amazing to see the evolution. And you know, I think it's been really impressive to see how the industry's pivoted in the last, you know, probably what, 9 months, 10 months, almost a year now. And really curious to see where it goes from here. Mark, I'm shocked you guys haven't produced a WWE style Apex Legends show. Makes me sad.
Man, if I was on the producer chat, we can go ahead and go at it, because I kind of want to see a UFC show. You know, there's no reason why I don't think that should have happened.
All right, I'll find you on LinkedIn. We'll get in touch.
Absolutely, we got it.
And last, Jonas.
I think it's just interesting to think about this. Like almost an entire new generation that is coming online that is growing up with this, right? They are absolutely not gonna take linear. They're used to just like clicking away very quickly, and it's just they just consume media very differently. I mean, I have a opportunity to watch this all the time and trying to figure out. Even, I mean, I work here, and every day I'm trying to figure out what's going on because it's moving so fast, which we call the meta is moving so fast. But I think just like as a traditional broadcaster, I think there's a lot to learn just looking at how these creators are making things and how they're basically using the long tail to their advantage. Usually the long tail used to be something that is expensive. You know, you don't want to have hundreds of broadcast setups. But with the internet, I do think like we're finally into a point where you can use the long tail to your advantage, customize your content, make it actually accessible to more people, which gives you just a longer reach.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining the panel today. I'd like to thank John for asking me to moderate the panel. This has just been so much fun. I feel so grateful to be part of such a powerhouse of a panel today. This has really been something else. So thank you all, and thank you to the audience for coming today. Appreciate it. Matcha, take us home.
Yeah, so thank you very much to John for producing it. Thank you to all the panelists for finding time to really entertain us with great knowledge and experience, and willingly sharing it with everybody. And on behalf of Washington, D.C. section, thank you to everybody else for joining us. And we hope we can do more of this fun and have a part 2 of esports and see how the second leg of pandemic has improved upon what you have done so far, because it seems without this, we would not be in such a fantastic place when it comes to this. So thank you very much, everybody, and hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mache, you're sticking on a little bit. Let me stop the recording.
Great job, guys. Beautiful.
Peter, John, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, Mark, good